Okay, so we've got COP26 going on at the very final days right now in Glasgow, and we've got people from Indigenous cultures across the world. We've got people from large organisations, all trying to fight for their turf and for what they believe. But what we do know, it is absolutely without any denial, is the fact that we are facing a climate crisis. And that is going to be a significant part of all our futures, and particularly for our children and our grandchildren and the future generations. And the decisions that we make today are going to be incredibly important. And that's going to be everything from how we think about with water, and thinking about infrastructure, thinking about jobs, thinking about education, thinking about access, equity, equality, all of these aspects. And of course, in our South Pacific neighbours around climate refugees. And how do we think and support those who are actually not contributing to the issue of climate, but are actually having the huge impacts? We've got, so on top of COP, even locally, we've got water reforms going on. And if you have been in New Zealand for a number of years, you may even be lucky enough to know back in the 50s and 60s, where infrastructure was heavily invested in. We had a very high tax rate in this country. We were very much an egalitarian society in terms of there was not the super rich, and there wasn't the extreme inequality we experience today. And the investment was around a lot of public housing and social housing. There was a lot of support in terms of getting industry going and actually really backing industry. And then we went into the reforms and more into the 80s, 90s and 2000s, where we stopped investing into a lot of infrastructure. And what we're facing now is the actual ramifications of not investing and thinking as a collective. And so we have non-consistent experiences around water and water quality. We have issues around transportation and public housing. We have a massive housing crisis, and access has become really critical. So just with one slice of that, we think about water and water reforms and three waters, you'll start to see the public opinions are very varied about that, and who should sort of be in the decision-making chair. And what happens when you're thinking about a program at a master's level is you actually explore these things in depth. So there isn't a right or wrong. We allow people to have their points of view and to be able to stand up and talk, find the information, supported by research, have the debate, and actually build your own understanding of others. Because actually, as we live through life, we often, if we take a black and white view of things, we miss the intricacies and the importance of the shades of grey, where actually people bring different perspectives. They're doing different references from either an age reference, you know, if they're young and a youth, they may be thinking quite differently than someone in the later stage of their life. We bring cultural differences, we bring experiences. So study is one of the greatest things to really understand and enhance our learning. We've also had, for example, in the last few days, the Reserve Bank put a public paper out into New Zealand about what if New Zealand was to have a digital currency and support it on the blockchain. Now, you start to think about this. We're in a world of fintech. We're thinking we've got places like El Salvador who have moved entirely to cryptocurrencies with Bitcoin. You've got the Chinese yuan is being rolled out at the moment in time for the Olympics next year, for the Winter Olympics. You've got the cashless society, which is really rapidly evolving as we have contactless deliveries and contactless payments across the world because of COVID. So the whole financial systems are shifting, and even here we're starting to think about what would a digital currency look like. We've seen Bitcoin go from, wasn't that many years ago, for those of you who are early adopters in the late 2000s, around 2010, where you'd be paying less than $1 for a Bitcoin. It hit an all-time high yesterday of $65,000 per Bitcoin. So those who are dealing in cryptocurrencies. Tesla became the first car company to become $1 trillion company. We've also had Google for the first time became $1 trillion company in the last 2 days. We've got the great resignation that's happening around the world, where mid-tier, middle managers, more than any other group, are quitting their jobs at record levels. But we also have the lowest unemployment at 3.5% in New Zealand right now. So we cannot find talent for love or money, particularly those who understand technology and tech adjacent types of careers and integrations and project managers and everybody who understands this new world that we live in. Today, New Zealand's average house price hit $1 million across the country as average. Insane. We also had Apple Pay hit 383 million users today. So here we have another digital currency with Apple. And just this afternoon, it was announced that Weta Digital was sold to Unity Games. So good old New Zealand homegrown for a small sum of $1.62 billion. That is my world. Every day, watching, observing, and looking for signals of change. So we look at economic systems, look at behavioral change, we look at what people support and protest, the actions or inactions, and actually all of this comes from knowing more about your world around you. And so when I developed the Master of Technological Futures, it was entirely based upon this idea as mature adults, and mature being anything from the time you leave your formal studies, at whatever age that might be, and get into the real world. It's very hard to find the places where you talk about the really big impact decisions. We're often caught in the day-to-day lives. We have a job, we get busy, we talk about the stuff we know already. We don't often talk about the things we don't really understand or have little exposure to. And so rather than developing a master's, which is focused on one particular sector, one industry, one particular focus area, we've taken a very holistic view and said, actually, we have a world that has been increasingly digitized, a world that is increasingly young and old. So we have the largest population of the under 24s, but rapidly matching them are the over 65s. We have automation, we have artificial intelligence, but we also have a shifting expectations about fairness, equity, equality, and moving around standard sort of views of capitalism. It couldn't be more exciting to be at this moment in time because we have the ability, the connections, the power, the capacity to change the world into a much more bright and plentiful future for all, but we need knowledge. And so I really just want to say, if you're thinking about this journey, no one has ever said to me that they regret going back to study as an adult. And that's across literally tens of thousands of students that I've taught over the last 25 years. The more you learn, the more addictive it becomes, the more you want to learn, the more you get into new interesting conversations and new collectives and new communities and new groups, the more you learn, the more you want to learn, the more you want to share. It's a really fantastic way of actually bringing vibrancy and actually the ability to make real positive change in your life. So I will hand over, and I could talk all day, and people know that I still love teaching as much as I possibly can. It's one of my greatest joys, being in front of a classroom. This is what I'm super passionate about. New Zealand has got the lowest level of professional development in the OECD. I personally want to change that. I want us to become one of the most informed and educated professional groups in the world. The goal of the current government is to make New Zealand the world's most digital economy. We have a long way to go, but I think with great leaders, we can get there and we can actually make Aotearoa New Zealand a remarkable place today, but also over the next 100 years. So Amanda, I'll finish off there and hand back to you, but thank you all so much for coming along, and I'm looking forward to the interaction over this session.
Thank you so much, Frances. There's some big drivers that we need to be helping to drive our world into a new direction. There's some big challenges that we're facing. So it's crazy to hear some of those big things that we need to be focusing on, and hopefully some of our future students can knuckle down on those areas and make those changes. So I just wanted to open it up to the floor. If there was anything that's a burning question from anyone in our audience that something sparked some interest in them to say, oh, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? If you have any questions for Frances, please feel free to unmute yourself. We might have time for 1 or 2 questions that might come to mind for you. We will go over questions on the program a little bit later. But if there's anything topical on some of these big opportunities or challenges that we're facing, feel free to unmute yourself. Now's a good time to have a chat. But if not, we will move into how the program works. Cool. I will pop into how our program works. Give me 1 second. Cool. Thank you again, Frances. So Another quiz question. I think this one, you might be able to get it. So pop on in. Just need to find that screen you were just on before. Add your name in, join the quiz. We have a question coming up in a few seconds for you all. I'm going to see who can get this one, who can guess the fastest as well. So you'll have 20 seconds to figure out the answer. Coming through in a few seconds. Let's have a few more people. Who else is joining? I bet you most of you will get it right. I don't want to shame anyone, but if you don't get this right, ding ding, shame. Cool. All right, I'm gonna show you the quiz in about 5 seconds. Is that all of us? 4, 3, you ready? 2, 1. Which area do you think had the greatest number of listings on Seek in July? Was it science and technology, advertising, arts and media, or healthcare and medical? Pick your answer. You've got 7 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ooh, interesting. That was actually a tough one, actually. They're all very interesting areas. It was science and technology. Technology is touching so many different sectors. It's almost not a sector itself, because every sector can benefit from technology. And just out of curiosity, or out of interest, this order that you see here is the order of the greatest number of listings. So science and tech, then it was advertising, then arts, and then healthcare and medical, numbers 1 to 4. Greatest number of listings in July. So that's some perspective. Thanks for joining. So, oh, congratulations, Frances. Of course she was the fastest. Of course, 6 seconds. That's cheating. I shouldn't have let Frances in. Gosh. Well done. Well done, everyone.
Sorry.
So for those of you who don't know too much about Master of Technological Futures, here's the 2 structures that we offer. So you can choose part-time and full-time. So most of our students are working individuals, like a lot of you here will be, and we'll be picking the part-time option. The full-time option will be the same in the very first phase of the program, so that being the immersion phase. So this is 20 weeks long, and this is the opportunity for you to explore some of these technological levers of change and the human innovation as well that will come in helping to drive change too. So some of those key emerging disruptive technologies are spoken about, like artificial intelligence, big data, blockchain, robotics, IoT, and I can throw out a whole lot of other abbreviations that you'll talk about and discuss with your industry advisors that are live and breathe in this space every single day. And as well with your peers who will bring with them their expertise and from the professions that they come from. And this program attracts so many different people from so many different sectors. So it will be quite interesting to have those conversations from people from all walks of life and different industries, different roles, all through the structure of an organization. Solopreneurs as well, or people who are thinking about switching jobs or looking at their next opportunity. So it offers such a diverse range of conversations. Then moving into the project phase of the program. So this is the difference, and we're full-time. It will be a little bit quicker. It'll be 24 weeks. And on part-time, that'll be 32 weeks. So this is where you'll, after exploring some of these areas and discussing these topics with your peers and the industry advisors, you'll hone in on an area that you're passionate about or is relevant to you in your context within your workplace or your organization, or an opportunity that you've identified through that 6 months of the immersion phase that you think, I can see I can make a difference here, or I see a challenge that I would like to help resolve a problem for, or to create a new value space in the future, or create positive change. So you don't have to come to this program with a project in mind or an area that you want to work in, because that's the space where you can keep your mind open and start that exploration, moving into the project phase and deciding this is what I want to focus on. So throughout that project phase, you'll have regular catch-ups with your industry advisor, who will be aligned to you based on a specific interest, what you're wanting to achieve. And off the back of that, out the end of the program, you'll either come out with a real-world working solution, or maybe you'll come away as a subject matter expert. So you'll deep dive into the specific areas, you'll start researching, you'll go and collate this data, find what's out there, what's happening, what isn't happening, and become that expert yourself. So the upcoming intakes for 2022, we've got February, June, and October. We have 2 different delivery models, the blended and on-site. So the blended delivery method for our next intake in February, this means that there's an on-site component and a remote component. So our very first workshop block on a Thursday and Friday in February will be on-site, so you get to meet your industry advisors, your peers as well, and have these discussions in person, because that helps you to create that connection and community with your group, who you'll be working alongside with for a year or a year and a half. From there on out, you'll have 2 hours of 2 hours a day of classes during the day. So Mondays and Tuesdays, and I can send this info to you afterwards. Mondays and Tuesdays is 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. and Wednesdays and Thursdays is 12 p.m. to 2 p.m. So long as you can get your support from your employer to be attending classes and to have that time towards your study, then that's all good for you, and that's completely remote as well. So if you can travel up for Auckland for that very first block of 2 days, and then all the rest will be online, so you don't have to travel, and that works well for your busy life. Then our on-site delivery method for our June and October intakes, this works a little bit differently, and yes, that the workshops will be on-site, but it is once a month, so you only have to make that once a month commitment for the 3-day workshops. So every month there will be a Thursday, Friday, and Saturday to be on site and with your peers and your industry advisors, fleshing through some of these topics. So you can arrange travel once a month if you're outside of Auckland, or to come on site for that time. So again, just checking in with your employer, if you will be employed, that you can come along to those days on a Thursday and Friday, or to get their support and having that on work time, as a lot of employees are able to get approval for. And again, if you do want to look at the exact dates and the times of when you'll need to be somewhere and where, I've got a link here for the program handbook, and these slides will be available to you after the session. So you're welcome to check in on that there. So I'm going to introduce our wonderful Master of Technological Futures team. Maheshi, she is on this call. She is our postgraduate program lead, who takes care of the academic rigor of our postgraduate programs, including the Masters, and helping to provide any academic supports to our current students as well. Sophia Zhang is our lead advisor across the Masters program, recently come into the role with Paula Gear, who was our previous advisor, who is still one of our advisors here as well. Yuka Gray, our program manager, and that is not supposed to say Yuka Gray, that is supposed to say Sarah Mwashima, who is taking care of making sure that the sessions are facilitated well throughout your program. So I'm going to hand over to you, Maheshi, to introduce our wonderful panelists who are joining us tonight.
Kia ora. Thank you so much, Amanda. And I see there's a question in there on the Slack about the weeks not adding up in that slide. So I think what's happened is we've left out the part 2 of the project phase of the Masters. So we will make sure that that's updated and you have that slide deck the updated slide deck there for you. But anyone who's thinking about it and you can't move past that question, just very quickly, like Amanda said, the immersion phase, regardless of whether you're full-time or part-time, is 20 weeks. And when you're in the part-time option of the master's, part 1 of that project phase is 24 weeks, and then part 2 is 28 weeks. And then in the full-time option, the part 1 is again 24 weeks, and the remainder is 8 weeks. So that will add up to the 52 and the 75 weeks of the program. So hopefully that clarifies. All
That's
good.
just proof that we don't need to do maths here.
So yeah, I have the absolute pleasure of leading this master's program, you know, supported by the amazing program team that Amanda introduced to you all. And today I have the absolute pleasure of running the Q&A session with these panelists that you see on screen. So we have Abel Butler, who is currently a master's student with Gen 12. So with all our cohorts, we call them generations. So we're up to Gen 16. So Abel is part of Gen 12, which is a fully online version of the master's program. That was a result of us, you know, starting this master's, this cohort during COVID, our first lockdown. And then we have John Lau on the call, who is a current master's student from Gen 13. And then Jacqueline Comer, who is a graduate from Gen 10. And then we have Felix Schultz, who is our innovation advisor and resident blockchain expert, who is part of the master's program as an advisor and the assessment and moderation team as well. So we might just, did you want to spotlight everybody, Amanda?
I shall. Let's bring everyone up to the stage.
Perfect. So while we get that sorted, I might just kick off with, you know, allowing the panelists to introduce themselves. So please tell us a little bit about you. What were you up to when you decided to join the master's program? And for you, Felix, your background and expertise as well.
Perfect, no problem. As you hear, the accent is not a Kiwi accent, so I'm German, coming because of my love for surfing to New Zealand. As part of the master's program, I have a background in blockchain, have been part of a couple of blockchain startups, but by trade, I have an MBA in accounting, tax, and auditing, so far, far away from blockchain tech. So my goal is to equip everyone with the skills and capability to explain blockchain while having a barbecue on a Friday and get everyone energized about what blockchain is. Well, there's Bitcoin out there. It's just the first use case of it, and there are much more use cases around that one. So this is blockchain, this is my baby. And as part of my history, I've dealt with a lot of big projects across Europe and New Zealand. So I'm teaching also project and product management, as well as helping the candidates getting unstuck throughout their master's journey. And it's amazing to see everyone's thriving.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Felix. And Felix is one example of the subject matter expertise that we have on this course. And many of our subject matter experts who come in are part of either startups, larger organizations, or are consultants themselves. So they bring in that knowledge, and because they live and breathe, like Amanda said, that area, you know, the content is constantly updated. They bring in that real world knowledge as it happens on the ground as well. And it's not a lecture style learning. You know, you share your knowledge, you share the information that you need to know, but really the golden nuggets of the sessions that you will have is in the conversations, the application of that knowledge, the use cases that you will go through as a group as well. So I might move on to you, John, to introduce yourself.
Cool. Kia ora katoa. My name is John, and quickly, my background is in information technology. So there has been a training. So I have an undergrads in electrical engineering, moved into IT, and I'm that sort of person who kind of, you know, over a certain period of time, I wanted to evolve. So I've gone from IT to project management, and in the last 5-10 years, I really hit my sweet spot, which is design thinking. So I'm currently a design thinking practitioner with Fonterra, and why Fonterra is because I wanted to get into the sort of agri space, and I'll probably talk a little bit more later in terms of the pivot that I have. So so anyone who are thinking about a career change, not necessarily a 180 degrees change, but really looking at pivoting into something of an area of interest, and that's how I pivoted. And Tech Futures Lab was kind of the Y junction whereby I pick a road and I'm traveling down that way. And so yeah, so that's kind of the how I actually started with my journey with Tech Futures Lab.
Fantastic, thank you. Jacqueline. Thanks, Maheshi. So I'm Jacqueline, and I'm the Chief Product Officer and co-founder of a company called Areto Labs. But my background is definitely not in technology. Before I became the Chief Product Officer at Areto Labs, I was a creative director. I was working for the Warehouse Group, and I've never really been intentional about my career. Except for like my very first job. And I'm a Canadian, and I really wanted to be an ice hockey reporter because I thought that meant that I would go to free hockey games all the time. And so that was my career goal. And I got that goal quite early on and quickly realized that, you know, me sitting around drinking beer and eating popcorn, watching a hockey game was not the reality of, you know, being a sports journalist. And from there, my career just sort of unfolded, as I think it often does for people. I just followed opportunities, but never with any intention of thinking about what I wanted to do next. And sort of got to the point where, you know, I'd been a creative director for a while, moved to New Zealand, and realized I don't want to do this anymore. I kind of like, maybe not at the peak of my career as a creative director, but just not interested anymore. And there's got to be something else out there, but I have no idea what that is. And yeah, that's what brought me to Tech Futures. And I'll talk a little bit later about where like my whirlwind of the last couple of years, because I think actually today might be my 2-year anniversary since I started, just about. Yeah. Oh, fantastic. Yeah. That's very timely. And Abel.
Kia ora. Yeah, nice to be speaking with you. So I'm Abel Butler. I've spent most of my career managing and growing and developing our whānau business Health Posts, which is a mainly online retailer of natural health and beauty products based here in Golden Bay. Was working for some time towards taking a career break and doing some long deferred overseas travel when COVID struck. So had also been looking at the Tech Futures Masters program, and so it was kind of a blessing in disguise, and that I took the opportunity to enroll in the program part-time 18 odd months ago. I'm nearly finished, and that's taken me in a whole different direction. But also in the course of that journey, my replacement resigned, so I've actually had to step back into also running our company while finishing up the program, which has not been without its challenges, but super interesting journey, which we might touch on later as well. Cheers.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, everybody. And from all the students and graduates, what we're hearing is you come into that junction and you make that choice of, you know, where to next. And let's talk about that choice. You know, why Tech Futures Lab? Why did you choose the Masters of Technological Futures when the most common comparison to this Masters program is an MBA? And interestingly, the more candidates that I interview, because as part of your application process, you have a very casual interview with me just to make sure that your interests align with the program, what we can deliver. And many of the people who are applying now, they've done an MBA and they kind of wanted something to update, you know, themselves and their skills going forward. So, you know, what was your choice? Why did you choose the MTF program? Who wants to go first?
Oh, why don't I start? I chose the program, with just a little bit of thinking and a little bit of Googling, like what's out there and what can I do right now that I can join, I can take a program, and that I don't actually like have to know exactly what I want to do. I knew that I wanted to pivot. I've always been into tech, but had absolutely no idea what that meant. And I felt like as I was looking at, you know, all the programs on offer, that it was like, if I'm going to spend my own money and take time away from my family, I need to be in a program where I don't actually have to have it figured out. And I had my pre-meeting with one of the advisors, one of the program coordinators, and she said, "You like, it's great that you don't know what it's going to be, because you need to keep an open mind." And just everything that she was saying really resonated with where I was. So I know I need to do something, but I have no idea what, and I just want to learn so I can find that thing. And this was just the right program for me to be able to do that.
Fantastic. Thank you, Jacqueline. John, I know you were comparing even within the Tech Futures Lab program offerings. Do you want to talk a little bit about why you chose the Masters?
Yeah, certainly. I think so. The motivation for me started with the fact that when I was doing design thinking and I trained within design thinking, one of the particular thing that I learned in that process with IDEO was the circular design, which is around circular economy in terms of waste, pollutions, and whatnot. And that was way back in about 2016, and it really got me to be very interested in around how economic systems work globally in a sense. So, and that really, that has been a trajectory for me to start thinking about climate change and whatnot. So at the moment, I'm glued to anything to do with COP26 and following with all the protests and everything else. So, and what happened also, the fact that I have a huge love for nature. And so originally I come from Borneo, and Borneo rainforest, and know that, and one of the biggest challenge for us is deforestation. And so coming here to New Zealand, you know, I kind of bring that mindset with me. So in the whole process of discovery, personally for me, I wanted to do something more than just information technology. So I was in the telco space, so I've gone around Vodafone, Spark, and whatnot. I realized one day that when I woke up that, you know, selling broadband for the rest of my life is not very appealing. And I want to do more than that. And so I wanted something very impactful. So I look at what my personal passion was and where I needed to go, and it landed on circular economy, and that was a big thing for me. And I was starting to look at, you know, so how do I learn circular economy, because there was no masters. They look at masters in circular economy in those days. And so I look across all the different masters program in New Zealand, and a lot of them were very tailored to very specific, and whereas I have a very specific interest of my own. So I found Tech Futures Lab. And initially, I was going to do the postgrads in human potentials, just to kind of, you know, I was really searching at that point in terms of, you know, what's the right angle for me. Circular economy, even in itself, is fairly, you know, massive in terms of focus area. And so I rang Tech Futures Lab and I say, hey, I've got this desire to do circular economy, and are you quite specific in area? And what was really transpiring and also very encouraging for me is that no, you can pick, you know, what you wanted to do and make it a master of your own in that scenario. So I was really excited about that prospect. So hence I chose to do this with Tech Futures Lab. Yeah.
Fantastic, thank you. And Abel.
Yeah, so I heard Francis speak at a tech event a few years ago, and yeah, I was pretty much on the hook from then and looked into what else this amazing person was doing, yeah, and saw that there was the opportunity to do the masters, and did look into it a bit more. And I guess similar to John, I'm really interested in I'm kind of interested in the evolution of the human journey overall and the way that technology intersects with that. And what really appealed about this master's program was the structure, and that the initial phase is kind of all about immersion and inspiration, but then you get to go into like a really deep dive into a topic or a project of your own choosing from that. So yeah, the structure worked really well for me, and the flexibility around it as well.
Fantastic, thank you so much. And I might I'll start with you, Felix, with the next question, because Masters of Technological Futures, there are different interpretations of this. And for people who are not familiar with how we run things at Tech Futures Lab, you know, they might have a different conception of what that means. And sometimes, often we get asked, you know, do you need to know how to code in this Masters? And the answer is no. And so because you advise across a range of, you know, students, can you kind of talk about what that interpretation means to you and the students that you advise?
Yes. So first of all, just re-emphasizing, you don't need to code. Even myself have been product delivery manager on a couple of blockchain startups. as mentioned, auditor, accountant, tax advisor, pretty boring, but product delivery, zero code experience. And I think if you can code, it just limits your imagination. So everyone who can't code, this is the best spot to be. And what we're aiming to do for me personally as blockchain, as well as all the other industry advisors from AI to machine learning, IoT, we're starting at the beginning. We equip you with all the knowledge from the start. So that's why you don't need to code. We're starting at the beginning and give you the tool set on hand to figure out if the technology is the enabler for your problem you're trying to solve. So don't be scared if you have zero clue about technology. I think it's the best way to start unbiased and go into it. So so we take a fresh approach. You get all the bells and whistles onto your bike when you're embarking on the journey. And my goal for blockchain is I run a 1.5 hour non-technical blockchain introduction. And my goal is to have everyone equipped explaining the concept of blockchain within the first 15 minutes during having a beer on a barbecue on a Friday. And it worked always. So with that said, and this is similar to machine learning, AI, we break the complex things down for you in smaller chunk that you can apply it and really assess if this suits your problem along the journey. Does that answer your question, Mahisha?
Yeah, thank you, Felix. And I'm hoping the rest of the panelists can either confirm what Felix is saying is true, you know, based on your experience on the master's program. So who wants to jump in?
Yeah. Oh, sorry. I can speak to that if that's helpful.
Thanks,
yeah, just in the context of my project. So the project I'm working on is looking at the use of computer vision and machine learning to try and identify seabird bycatch in New Zealand fisheries to try and reduce the costs and increase the efficiency with which we can deploy electronic monitoring in New Zealand. And so obviously that's inherently a technically complex challenge, but I can't really code a jot to save myself. So what's been the saving grace there is the ability to partner on the advice of advisors. And yeah, Maheshi kindly introduced me to an expert in computer vision at the University of Auckland, and I have also a commercial partner in the project who are really technically competent. So yeah, there's all kinds of opportunities without having to code, but still while being able to learn and see the potential of different technologies, even complex ones.
Perfect. Thanks, Abel. And Jacqueline, perhaps this is a chance to talk about your evolution within the master's program.
Yeah, I mean, I've always liked tech, but I was never really deep into it. And I started my project, I think my very first, this is what I'm going to do, was actually how can I share my vegetables, my extra vegetables in my vegetable garden with a neighbor? If I want to make a salad and I've got, like, my tomatoes haven't worked this year, but my neighbor has that, how can I just go on my phone and just, you know, exchange in my neighborhood? That's where I started. And I ended with, how might you use natural language processing, which is an arm of machine learning, to surface microaggressions in digital text? So, woo! Quite the pivot. I knew nothing about machine learning at all. I'd heard of it. I knew it had something to do with AI, but didn't have a clue what it was. And now, you know, I've published a paper and presented a paper at a international conference on natural language processing and algorithmic fairness. And that's from no technical abilities. And I think one of the misnomers, the misunderstanding maybe of the Tech Futures or Master of Technological Futures name is that it's actually a master of creative problem solving that uses technology as a tool, like a disruptive technology as a tool. So it's really about finding a problem that you're passionate about, because that's the only thing that's going to make you want to keep doing it as you're balancing work and all your other stuff. So you're solving a problem creatively, and you're learning about all these really cool technologies and trying to figure out, like, what technology, what tool do I need to solve this problem? And so my problem at the time was how do you make sure that your natural language processing algorithms actually pick up online toxicity that is not necessarily overt toxicity. So if somebody says you're a jerk, that's probably coded into the algorithm, into the data set that says that. But what about those sort of more sly aggressions? They don't exist in any sort of machine learning model. And so how do you actually do that? How do you build a model around that so that we can create these models for everyone to use that actually everyone can understand? So like my days went from thinking about campaigns to now, conversations about algorithmic bias and ethics around data set labeling. I didn't know any of that a couple of years ago. I knew nothing about that a couple of years ago.
Thank you so much, Jacqueline. And John, I might ask you to talk about, even with your colleagues who are on your cohort, pivoting. Because one of the questions that we get asked is, do I need to have a solid project idea before I start the master's? And I think listening to you, Jacqueline, the answer is no. And you kind of embrace that process of discovery through that immersion phase and continue right that on to, the project phase and even to your part 2 in your case. And so, John, you've recently pivoted as well. And so do you want to just talk about that process and then perhaps the support that you get in order to pivot?
Sure. And so, as I mentioned earlier, I had a broad interest in circular economy, and that is the focus area is as big as banker. And but the focus on circular economy is about designing on waste and turning waste into values and then regenerate the economy in a nutshell. So I went in with kind of, broader context and just want to talk that, that immersion phase within that first 20 weeks is really a discovery process. And you really go in, and I would highly encourage that if you decide to take on the course, is actually to go in with an open mind. So within my cohort, there are 13 of us, and what was so there's more, just under 20 of us. But what was interesting was the fact that everyone came in with a very different ideas, and some of them, like me, who is on one spectrum, whereby I know that it's probably around circular economy, but I don't know what. I have no idea what's the focus. And then I have a couple of cohort colleagues. They are very specific. They know exactly the impact they're trying to drive for it, in that sense. So, and people like me, I go, wow, what an amazing people. They know what they want. And so for me, it was really encouraging from TFL to really go, actually, this is your exploration period. So I really spent the time to explore, and having that, and my project actually came at the time as a result of having conversations with my cohort. And I had an opportunity to look into mussel waste. So in New Zealand, and at the moment, mussels is one of our premium seafood produce. But what is happening is that mussel shells are being discarded as being waste, and nothing is done about it. There are trials being done trying to actually make it into fertilizers and additives and whatnot, but there isn't anything done sort of at scale. So I actually, through conversations with my colleagues and within the cohort, and explored and say, hey, I know a mussel farm and up in Bay of Plenty. And so here I was on a car, drove over all the way down to Whakatoa, and I've never seen a mussel farm in my life, and it was just the most amazing experience, and just being in that process. And I'm going, okay, I'm going to be looking at turning mussel shell waste into something really, really awesome. Now, there was a bit of a caveat, and when I was talking to the operator of the mussel farm, he did say, look, I'm in the middle of a very busy schedules. I am currently building a mussel factory. And so now the requirement is that when I get into the project phase, I need time with the operator as part of the research, I need to be there for quite a considerable period of time on a regular basis. And so he did call it, there could potentially be a risk. And sure enough, within a very short space of time, because of his urgency, he just couldn't, give me the attention needed. So as a result, I needed to pivot. And so at the end of everything was signed, we're like, oh, good to go. And so we're ready to sort of tackle that. And unfortunately, that had to change. So recently, I have actually pivoted into looking at regenerative farming. And so I've all of a sudden, again, through my networks and my contacts, and so I've got, in the next couple of weeks, once I can get out of Tamaki Makaurau, and I'm actually going down to 3 different farms. I'm going to do a bit of the farm tours and really talk to them about circular and regenerative agriculture. One thing just to talk about is, I think the word technology, when we first went in, and a bit of a misnomer into Jackie's point earlier, is that technology here is broader than just digital technology. So everything that I study at the moment in terms of circular economy, it is a disruptive framework. So framework in itself is a technology. So so it's broader than just digital tech. So with what I'm doing at the moment, I can definitely see how this disruptive framework called circular economy framework is starting to penetrate through New Zealand. And within that, potentially, I've already started identifying opportunities. For example, precision agriculture can be used. So that's where the digital technologies come through. But my starting point was not about technology. My starting point was about how do I reduce waste? How do I reduce pollution in New Zealand? That was the problems that I wanted to solve.
Perfect. Thank you so much, John. I might go to you, Abel, for the next question, which is all around, how do you balance work, life, study, and especially during like an extended lockdown for those who are in Auckland, and with the future of uncertainty, what advice would you give for anyone considering study at the moment? And what did you go through, in terms of that process of doing the balancing act?
Thanks, Maheshi. Yeah, so it's been an interesting process in terms of finding myself with a much bigger day job commitment, as it were, than I had originally envisaged. But yeah, not unmanageable. I think the key thing for me has just been to keep putting one foot in front of the other and making sure that I'm always making at least some progress on my project the entire time, which has worked out really well for me. I think it is kind of a testament to the flexibility in the program that I was able to, I am doing part-time, but to go into it thinking I kind of had all the time in the world, to then finding I had very little time, but that's still somehow able to balance out. Yes, I think I'm outside of Tamaki Makaurau, down in Golden Bay, as noted. So you can only imagine the challenges of lockdown. But yeah, for me, in terms of there couldn't have been a better time, I guess, to get into the project. I feel into the program. I feel like, particularly, we're so bombarded at the moment, I think, with kind of worrisome news and external challenges. And for me, I think I was beginning to perhaps become quite pessimistic. And then coming into the program has, I guess, helped me to feel, I guess, more empowered and engaged in taking a really constructive role in creating the future that we want, despite all of the challenges around us. And so I definitely give the program plenty of credit for that. So the challenges are still there, but I feel like the program's helped me to see a role for myself in contributing to solutions as well, which is awesome.
Fantastic. Thank you, Abel. John and Jacqueline, anything to add there in terms of balancing everything?
Yeah, I mean, like, it's not easy. It's not like it's like, how do you get work-life balance? How do you get work-life and master's balance? Like, it doesn't exist balance, but you make it work, because I think, especially if you find that problem you really care about, you're going to do it. But I guess one of the things I don't think any of us have talked about, and I don't know what all the other classes were like, but the support you actually get from your other classmates is amazing. It's like a group of people who've all made that same decision and that same intention at the same time as you. And so even though you're from completely different places, you're studying completely different things, trying to solve completely different problems, you're all also going through the masters together and having those same ups and downs. And when one person's down, and 3 more are up to pull the other person, and you sort of have that cohort of people that you can lean on. Your advisors are the same thing. You have your regular check-ins. So, there is a bit of guilt. Like, if you haven't done anything on your project for a few weeks because you're just so tired, that meeting is coming up and you better do something. so there's also like some of those external pressures, but also that support around you. That's really great. And my gen, we still talk. We have our WhatsApp chat, and we chat all the time. And we still support each other in our careers and what we're doing. And I'm working with a couple of people in my gen, combining our projects together into these other projects. So it's not easy, and it does take time, and it's like, there's no shortcuts, but there's a lot of people who are supporting you and rooting you on.
Fantastic. And so I'm just mindful of time as well. So I might just do a very quick around the room with everybody on the panelists. You know, you've all been involved in the master's program, Felix, you as an advisor. Like, in one word, can you kind of capture what the journey's been like for you?
Amazing. I'm always excited seeing new faces and seeing those people thriving, taking that kind of opportunity, to change their lives, the lives of the community for better. So it's amazing. And we're here to support from an advisor perspective, from your cohort perspective, and it's just creating that kind of community. Although we're at the moment remote, we're not co-located, well, Zoom, Slack, makes it easy for scheduling, get things done sessions where we maybe just see ourselves on a Zoom, but just working on our project. So this is amazing, thriving and creating and being part of that amazing journey.
Thank you, Felix. John.
I think if there was anything, a quick one in terms of life balance, do not start a new job if you can. If you start for a new job, absolutely negotiate if you can do 4-day week, which is what I do with Fonterra, because the onboarding process of starting a new job at the same time trying to do a master was crazy. And being frank and honest, I actually had to slow down on my master's learning for a month or two because it was just too much to handle. And so just something to be aware of in terms of mindfulness of your mental health and whatnot. Otherwise, my only thing for you to take away is if you decide to come on it, quick advice, and you will experience this very soon, is lean on your cohort, and because they are going to give you the most value in terms of learning and sharing. Most of my most valuable moments, other than what you get from the lectures, were really conversations with your cohort and also beyond the cohort. And TFL is fantastic in terms of connecting me to different cohorts and previous cohorts and whatnot. And otherwise, use this master's. For me, I'm using this master as my exploratory because I'm definitely pivoting in terms of my future. And this has been absolutely amazing in terms of giving me that space to explore. And so this is I guess it's the beginning stage of my pivot in that sense. So.
Perfect. Explore would be the word for you, John.
Yeah.
And Jacqueline, what about you?
Awesome. I think this won't be surprising for Felix or Maheshi or Francis. Life-changing. My life is, I finished my master's in April, and the day after I quit my job and went all in on Areto Labs as a founder. And look, I haven't looked back. My life looks nothing like it did before I started at all. And it's everything I wanted, and I had no idea what it was going to be, if that makes sense.
Fantastic. And Abel, finally.
Yeah, because Jacqueline took life-changing, I'll go with transformational, but yeah, that's so awesome. I'm kind of a little bit similar to Jackie's story. I just haven't quit my job yet, but all kinds of new horizons have opened up. Yeah, it's amazing.
Fantastic. So I think Amanda will open up the floor for any questions. There was a question for me about how many people have graduated from the master's program. So like I mentioned, we're up to Gen 16, but Francis, are you able to answer that question?
It must be around 400. I'm thinking something like that.
Yeah.
But I don't know exactly. Yeah. Actually, can I just add, while everyone's here, if you're still on the fence and you're not sure you want to undertake a full master's commitment right at this stage, we have just launched 2 new micro credentials. One is in disruptive technologies, and one is in the Internet of Things for sustainability. So it's getting better data to understand sustainability. and they start next Monday, both of them. They're part-time, online fully for 10 weeks. And the amazing thing is, because it's the first time we've run them, they are free. Now, there's only a few places left on it. If you go to Tech Futures website today, and you could finish that and then go into your master's. So it will give you a really good indication of how we learn. It's a slightly different model because it is a micro credential, and it's more a little bit more self-paced. But actually, I just thought it's worth saying, because sometimes someone's like, whoa, a master's is too big a step right now. That option is there. It won't be free again. So it is just purely, it's sort of a COVID support that we're doing right now. And also just the idea, because it is a new program. So two very different programs, but one around the Internet of Things and sustainability, and one around disruptive technology. So it's worth saying that. But the close-up, I think, is tomorrow. So you'd need to make a decision pretty quickly. Thank you.
Thanks, Frances. Anyone else with questions? Just feel free to unmute yourself and ask the panelists as well.
Hi, thank you. That was awesome, really inspiring. I just have a question. The postgrad certificate in human potential, can you just comment on how, is it totally separate from the master's? Is it like a precursor? Just some more information on that would be super helpful.
Yeah, I can answer this question. So the human potential for the digital economy and the postgraduate certificate in connected environments, there's a pathway into the master's program. So it's cross-crediting. So essentially what you're doing is you're cross-crediting the credits that you gain from the PG certs into the immersion phase of the master's, and you just convert, you get to a theoretical but actionable plan in the PG certs programs, and then it varies for everybody because the context is so different for everyone. But you convert that plan into a research project in the master's is essentially the stepping stone into it. So with the connected environments program, it's all about IoT data and creating a connected environment. Whereas the human potential closely aligns with the master's program, but we don't cover as many disruptive technologies in that. We're more focused on building your human potential and upskilling yourself and seeing those skill gaps, and how do you align yourself to organizational and societal changes. But certainly through the two PG Cert programs, you can convert that, the plan that you get to, and then into a research project on the master's program. Does that help, hopefully?
And Diane, it's probably just for numbers. So a master's program is 180 credits, a postgrad certificate is 60, so it's 1/3 of the master's. And a micro-credential is 15 credits. So it's a subset, so it's a quarter of a postgrad certificate.
And in the master's program, that's when you get that advisor one-to-one support as well, because it is a research level 9 program.
Just a question, Maheshi, from Bobby Lapatish. So she's asked, how much would you say your old jobs or your old jobs established benefit you in your new careers? Sorry, do you mind explaining that, Bobby?
Yes, I can do that. Maybe the questions towards John or any of you. I know you have a background in science, I think you said, or how much is that still actually the base knowledge that you bring into your new venture, or in any of you? Would you say actually it still matters that you have a few years or decades of your job if you want to have a career, make a career out of your new direction?
Yeah, if I can quickly speak to that. So in my career, because I have pivoted, transitioned, I can certainly adopt a lot of the aspects of my old career into what I'm doing. So for example, because I'm a design thinking practitioner, one of the things that Tech Futures Led advocates for is design thinking. So I actually bring what I do on a day-to-day basis into my master's program. So in that way, I'm actually it is actually quite a natural fit in a sense. Now, although my background is in information technologies, going into Tech Futures Led, it reinforces the value of technologies, but it is not a requirement, because what I'm learning in Tech Futures Led are far exceeding what I've known. So understandings around IoT, understandings around, blockchain and whatnot, which is very, very different than what I knew. So I didn't have to go in with that. But certainly things like project management skills that I had, because I was a project manager for a couple of years, and that was really, really handy going into that, because I had to actually manage my time and manage the project, manage the immersions and whatnot. So project element, there are some quote unquote, we call it soft skills, and or some of the things you have learned in your old jobs definitely has got transferable values into Tech Futures Lab, and you will naturally pick it up. And but more so in Tech Futures Lab, you're actually learning new stuff. I hope that kind of helped to answer
and
that.
just to add to that as well, Bobby, we get a whole range of candidates joining us. So the average age range for our master's candidate is between the 40 to 47 mark, and some people come with educational backgrounds, some come without. So we have an equivalence pathway, so you don't have to have a bachelor's or any degree. Actually, we look at what is the equivalent experience that you bring with you, or some people have studied but 20 years ago, so it's not relevant anymore. So really, we start from almost the same baseline, because we go through that journey together, and we have sessions that is focused on academic sessions like research question, how do you do a literature review, and all of that is covered, so that everyone kind of starts off on the same baseline. And then it just depends on your project and interest areas, and then you go down those rabbit holes as you wish as well. Just a question I can see about the timetabling and the session. So I would highly recommend you checking out the handbook that's available online, because that has a clear detail of the structure for the blended and the on-site versions. And then there's a question there about flexibility of attending those sessions. So we do require 80% attendance. The 20% is us acknowledging that life gets in the way. All we ask is that you just contact us and let us know where you are, what's happening in your world right now. And so we can put in a support structure there for you to help, for you to catch up if you miss any sessions. But that's the 80% attendance requirements is kind of the general. Is there any other questions coming through, Amanda? Or do we need to wrap up?
Yeah, Udav has asked if it was possible to reach out to our panel, the particular expertise that they developed from the course. He's interested in design thinking. He's not heard of this term before. So if anyone was happy to expand on that.
Yes, I'm happy to have a one-to-one after this, and feel free, happy to reach out, and I can take you through design thinking. And there are a lot of online resources. You can actually do design thinking for free now, which is really, really awesome. So happy to point you to the right directions. The other thing I was going to leave you with as well is that it was incredibly valuable for me before I started Tech Futures Lab, is I actually ended up having coffee chats with one or two graduates to really help me to have that deeper conversation. So what you're doing now is amazing. But so if you want to reach out to me, I'm more than happy to spend the time and just go through any questions you might have, and I'm more than happy to do so. And but highly, highly recommend it.
Thanks, John. And I know, Amanda, in your chats, you will often kind of connect potential applicants with current or past students as well. And our students and our graduates are more than happy to talk to you about their experience on the program. So I think
I'll get you connected. Yeah.
Great. I'll hand it over to you, Amanda.
Awesome. Well, thank you. That wraps up our evening today. Hopefully you can see me. Thank you again to our panelists for coming along and helping our potential future students to understand the Master of Technological Futures more, and how this can help them drive their futures into a direction to create positive change in their areas and create a world that we all want to live in, that will sustain a place that will be great for our future generations. So thank you all. We'll be sending you all out some little things afterwards for our panelists. Thank you very much. And if anyone does have any further questions on the Master of Technological Futures, I will send you my details after this. We'll share the slides with my contact details. And if you want to reach out to any of our wonderful panelists, just get in contact with me and we can have a conversation, and who's happy to start a conversation with you as well. So thank you, John, for popping your details there in the chat as well. You all have a lovely night tonight, and I will see you later down the track and having great conversations with you all. Just get in touch. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
Thank
you.
Cheers, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you.
Thank you. Ka kite.
Ka kite, everyone.